Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to another video. I realised something. Since I'm going to be playing my new Ranger for quite a lot of time over the next few weeks, possibly even months, I might end up forgetting things about Ellie, and there's a certain Ellie build I've never really put up on my channel that I really think I should talk about now while it's still all fresh in my mind and I've got a lot of tips for everyone. That would be a Staff Elementalist build video. I've never really talked about Staff for a long time after launch. I really didn't like Staff that much, but frankly, a Staff build has actually been one of my most used builds over the most recent months while I've been earning all of my money, while I've been farming for my last few legendaries and getting a lot of other cool goodies. It's mostly been Staff and then some other changes here or there, so I want to talk to you guys about it. What I'm going to show you is the best way to run a Staff Ellie in terms of DPS, okay? We're not going to go into a discussion about whether any other builds are warranted. This is just a max DPS Staff Ellie. Now, with any build, someone would be a fool to tell you there's only one build to rule them all in Guild Wars 2. There are always going to be options. There are always going to be shifts that you can make. I will talk about those as we go through the video, but I will give you exactly what I use and why. And hopefully this will enlighten some of you. I've had a lot of comments recently with people seeing me running around on my stuff and say, whoa, how did you do that? So I've got some cool tips. Hopefully I can impart with you. I will also go through my inventory and the kind of things I drag around in game that you guys probably should too, because it would make you much better players. So let's get started. First of all, we'll talk about gear, shall we? And I will preface this, everything I'm about to tell you about gear remains true for any other Elementalist build you run. Say you're running a Scepter Dagger with a Lightning Hammer build, say you've been running with your daggers, or even if you're using a Focus for whatever reason. All these things I'm about to tell you about gear do count, so this should be relevant to everyone, whether you want to Staff or not. Basically, there are two options, okay? If you're going for max DPS, there are two options. You can go with Berserkers, or you can go with Assassins, or Assassins Berserkers split somewhere in the middle. The difference between these two gear sets is the amount of crit chance you have, okay? So on pure Berserkers, which is what I've gone with, you end up with about a 58% chance to critical hit. If I take off my Signet down here, which is a part of the build, but say I take it off, you've got 49% chance base, right? That's with pure Berserkers. With, if I had gone for Assassins instead, my power value up here, I'd have slightly lower power, but my crit chance would be much higher. Now, if you're trying to optimize DPS, if you're trying to max DPS in Guild Wars 2, a big part of the game, the name of the game really, is getting your crit chance as high as possible, okay? Because imagine this, if I had 100% crit chance at all times, right, 100%, now the value can go over that, but if it does go over, anything extra is just wasted, right? Let's say we get to the perfect stat of 100% crit chance. That basically means that our crit damage stat, this one here, which currently reads 220, this stat just becomes like a global modifier to all of our damage, right? Every single attack we do crits, and every single one of those crits is doing 220% of the base damage, so it just becomes a flat number. So that's sort of the name of the game. You want it to be so that while you are in a dungeon scenario, you are as close to 100% or at 100% crit chance without going over at all times. Once you've ensured that you can get to that, then you can start building more power, and this will boost your damage even further. So, the reason I have gone with Berserkers on my Elementalist is because as an Elementalist, particularly in comparison to some other classes, not all, Thief has this luxury too, Elementalists do have a pretty easy way of boosting their crit chance higher without having to use any gear at all. Elementalists have two things, namely, that can boost their crit chance, or three things that can boost their crit chance very high without having to worry about gear. Number one is Signet of Fire. This is going to be a staple of the build. I'll talk about it more later when we get to utility skills, but this thing will passively always boost your crit chance by about 9%. I believe, hold on, let's turn it off and see here. So we go from 49 to 58, okay? 9% crit chance at all times. Really, really strong. That's worth an awful lot of precision, 180. So you're going to want to be running Signet of Fire, and Ellies get this quality of life that some other classes don't. They don't have a Signet that boosts their precision. Elementalists also have Lightning Hammer. Lightning Hammer is a viable build. It's not a part of playing on a Staff, in my opinion, but a Lightning Hammer also boosts your crit chance and your crit damage at the same time. So you can see now while I'm holding a Lightning Hammer, I've gone all the way to 66% crit chance. So again, I decided to go with Berserkers because I'm not going to be purely running Staff. Even though on a Staff build, I'm not always going to have Lightning Hammers. By running Berserkers as my stat choice, I've opened myself up with that freedom to run a Lightning Hammer too. And further, another thing I find myself doing on Elementalist that I find very fun is running around in World vs. World and blowing people up with Tornado Meteor Showers. Now, a Tornado, when you cast this, also boosts your crit chance massively to 93%. with just a little bit of food that easily goes to 100. And so for me, particularly in terms of using the meteor shower, tornado kind of stuff, I felt that Berserkers was the best way for me to go. That included running, say, Bloodlust on my sigils instead of precision stacks on my sigils, and also going for power-based infusions. All that said, however, I'm not always running with a tornado, and I'm not always running with a lightning hammer. In fact, on a staff build, you're not going to have a lightning hammer at all. So my base crit chance is only 58%. And so maybe if you were running a pure staff build, it would be better to go for assassin stats, because that's going to push your crit chance higher, and it's worth more than the power that Berserkers give you. Now, another thing that swayed my decision, and may be available to you if you're a player who has some legendary weapons, is you can actually swap the stats of your weapon to whatever you like. Now, if I run an Assassin's staff instead of a Berserker staff, if I have a consumable on that gives me some precision, and say I'm holding a lightning hammer, all it's going to take is like a single banner of discipline to push me up to the 100% crit chance mark. I actually have a screenshot of this. You can see on the screenshot here that I have a 100% crit chance, and the only assistance I have from anyone else in my team is a single banner of discipline. And so through this, I know that I can quite reliably, over a lot of different dungeon runs, be at the 100% mark, but still comfortably in pure Berserker's armor instead of having to invest in any assassin stuff at all. All of that said, there is still room for people as Elementalists to run assassins. I'm certainly not going to say it's bad. One of the great things about running assassins is it means when you're alone, just generally running around Tyria, when maybe you don't have your signet on for whatever reason, or certainly the lightning hammer if you don't fancy using it, if you don't have a tornado on, running assassin's gear is going to be way better for you. It means that in general you're going to be doing a lot more damage in solo or say duo oriented content where you don't have like a full team of 5 to buff you up constantly. So assassins is quite strong, and honestly, recently I've been very into the idea of soloing dungeons, or, you know, maybe duoing dungeons, and in a small part of me regrets having gone for pure Berserker. So anyway, it's personal preference, that's your choice, that's what you're going to be doing for gear. As you can see here, all of my armor is Berserkers. The runes I have chosen are runes of the Scholar. These are just basically the very best runes you can get in the game for boosting your damage. They will lose out over other runes, say strength runes, if you are below 100% health, but strength runes are very, very expensive right now, and in an optimum scenario, again, Scholar is better, so I went with Scholar. Mostly, again, this decision was made because I like the idea of blowing people up with meteor showers in World vs. World and being the very, very max I can be. So I went with Scholar. Your other option is strength, really. There are some other minor ones, but those are the two I would suggest. And over here on my trinkets, you will see I have all the Berserker stuff and power infusions on absolutely everything I can get. Oh, don't let me forget either. The sigils that I'm running on my weapons right now are a sigil of the Knight, and I also have a superior sigil of Bloodlust. Now, you do have some options here. Honestly, I don't think I recommend the sigil of Bloodlust. If you're running dungeons, you guys should know that nearly every single dungeon in the game takes place in the night. Even if it's daytime out in regular Tyria, as soon as you walk into, say, Ascalon Catacombs, it becomes night. So Sigil of the Night will give you 10% flat damage boost across most dungeons in the game. The only two it doesn't work for are Caudicus's Manor, which is considered a daytime dungeon, and the Ruined City of Arar, which is also considered a daytime dungeon. For those two, if you want, you can maybe have your own specific weapon with, say, a Sigil of Undead Slaying or a Sigil of Bandit Slaying, but I haven't gone quite too crazy. I like just having my one legendary, and I'll leave it there. On the discussion of Bloodlust, Bloodlust used to be really strong when you could, say, stack it on one weapon, then swap a new weapon on, and you would retain the Bloodlust stacks. Well, they've nerfed that. For a while, there was a trick you could use with underwater weapons, where if you had a Bloodlust sigil on there, it would still work, but even that has been nerfed now also, and honestly, I do not feel that an Elementalist, as squishy as we are, should be running Bloodlust. You will probably die too much. Later on, I will talk about a trait setup I use, which allows me to go down somewhat, and so Bloodlust really isn't amazing. The reason I personally have Bloodlust on me is because, again, of World vs. World, where I go off, I stack 250 power, and then I blow people up with meteor showers. I would suggest to you guys, if you do seriously want a pure dungeon build for staff, run a superior sigil of the Knight, which is 10% flat damage, and run a superior sigil of Force, which is 5% flat damage. If you are insane, you could run like a sigil of Knight, and then a sigil of Undead Slaying, for example, for 20% damage. But, you know, you'd need a different weapon for every single dungeon in the game in that case, unless you lugged around a bunch of sigils and just applied them every time you swapped over, but we're going kind of crazy here. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I've been running on my weapon. I will probably change this Bloodlust Sigil over to a Force one in due time. On the topic as well of going down state, you know, that would make you lose this Sigil of Bloodlust, I will say one thing. The reason that I found myself playing a lot of Staff as opposed to other Elementalist builds recently is that it allows you to go down and still roll out a lot of damage. Much of what you're doing on a Staff Elementalist, dropping Lava Fonts and Meteor Showers, these are constantly ticking damage up even if you go down. If you're running around on an alternate build, say a Lightning Hammer build, if you don't have a really strong team to support your squishy ass and you go down, your damage is seriously cut into, particularly considering you can drop that Lightning Hammer and not get it back. So other Elementalist builds will do more damage under certain situations, but Staff in general is much more forgiving. Anyway, that's to be on the scope, and that, guys, is gear. Next, let's look at another thing that really doesn't have anything to do with Staff in particular. Anyone, even Elementalist in particular, this bit doesn't have much to do with. And that would be what I lug around in my inventory. I've never really done a section like this on previous build videos, but I've come to appreciate how important it is. And there's a lot of cool stuff in this game that you can put in your inventory and still keep it quite compact. As you can see here, I have 160 slots in my inventory, and only 31 are full right now. And many of the items in my inventory right now are only here for demonstration purposes for you guys. This stuff at the top, these top two rows, these are what I carry about at all times. So let's have a look at them. Number one, I have a mini, which is my mini car key. You've got to leave some slots for fun, and my second slot also is a fun slot for me. This is my Thoughtless Potion. I tend to run around with my Devil Horns on. So that's what I do for my first two slots. The next one is something quite interesting I think you guys should know about. It's something I only learned about a few months ago. It did come back on sale in the gem store a short while ago too, but now it's gone again. This is the Executioner Axe toy. This is a costume brawl toy weapon, right? And you might think, well, why would you want to lug that around all the time? Maybe you're a player that likes Costume Brawl, sure, and you might think, oh, well, I always want it available. And frankly, it is an OP weapon for Costume Brawl. But the reason I've got it is something more than that. This weapon gives you insane mobility. This weapon will allow pretty much any class, no matter how slow they are, to seriously outpace anyone else that they want in the game. And I tell you that is no word of a lie. The skill 2 here is equivalent of a Warrior Greatsword 5. Okay, if I pop the skill 2 and hold it down, you'll see I run all this way. And if I cancel the toy out at the end, it cancels the animation that would make me stop and attack with it. So then if I double click my axe again, you'll notice it's actually off cooldown already. And so the Executioner's Axe is actually this fantastic thing that you can just run around Tyria constantly popping, like so. I messed it up there. But you can just keep running around with this thing. The cooldown on it is just 2 seconds, and it will get you through some really, really difficult stuff. Now, the caveat to this is if you get in combat, you can no longer pop the toy. So you do have to be aware of that. But for generally running around, if you want to get some errands done, if you don't mind just having your inventory open in a small bit of your screen, I usually have it over here so it doesn't obscure me too much, you can just keep clicking this thing. This works, this will move you further with swiftness, and it will move you even further if you're an engineer or an elementalist that uses super speed. It's really, really powerful. It's so powerful they actually disabled it for World vs. World a while ago, and that patch also sort of tells me that it is what it is. They're not going to nerf it any further. So it's a really cool toy, and I lug that around with me all the time. Not saying you guys need to have it. It's not even available right now, but do consider it. Next, I have my Ogre Pet Whistles and my Fire Elemental Powder. These are, generally, I actually don't pop these that much in dungeons, I must be honest. I don't do speed clears or care that much for many things. But these things will summon adds to fight for you. I actually messed up there. Do consider that when you've got both of these, always pop your Fire Elemental Powder first before the Pet Whistle, because otherwise it bugs out and you only get the Pet Whistle that runs. But yeah, so these two items summon adds. They're in particular really nice for Tequatl. They're nice for Worm. They're nice for whatever other small things you're trying to do. They are on 30-minute cooldowns now as well, so be cautious when you pop them. Make sure you use them exactly as you need them. After that, actually, I have another fun slot that shouldn't really be in my inventory right now, but this dyes me orange. I actually don't use this that much. The next things, okay, are consumables. This is something I think is quite important. I usually run, okay, if I'm not in dungeons, if I'm just doing generic stuff, I will usually run with hardened sharpening stones. There are better sharpening stones than this, namely the superior sharpening stones. The hardened sharpening stones give you power based on your toughness and based on your vitality. So 5% of toughness converts to power, and 3% of vitality converts to power. The superior ones are slightly better at this, ever so slightly better, but they cost way more money. So let's have a look at my power stat right now, okay? I have 2,672 power. If I use a superior sharpening stone instead of a hardened one, I gain, what was that, 20 power? it gives you an extra 20 power, but the massive difference in price could make you think otherwise. So that's why I've got this down here. It's just for demonstration. If you want true min max, go for superior sharpening stones. I just run with hardened personally. Another option, very interestingly, are toxic sharpening stones. Now these things are more expensive than the superior ones, and you might wonder why. So the description of toxic sharpening stones is it just gives you 100 power flat, and it increases your condition duration by 10%. So you might not know this, but as an Elementalist, an incredibly low vitality class, and on a build such as this, where we have very low vitality and toughness, the toxic sharpening stones flat plus 100 power is actually stronger than superior sharpening stones. By how much? I believe I did the maths before. I believe the difference is by 2 power. So right now we have 2,692 power. Let's pop one of these. Yeah, now we have 2,694 power, plus 10% condition duration. So, if you want to go crazy, if money is no option, if you've been on the Chinese gold selling websites, go for these, the toxic sharpening stones. They're the best by 2, but they are the best, so do consider that. So that's what I go with for my usual utility, if I'm not in dungeons. I'll get back to those in a second. And then I have 2 general consumables I like to pop for other stuff, right? Number 1 are Dragon's Breath Buns. These give you plus 200 power, so twice as strong as the Toxic Sharpening Stones, though obviously you can have them together, but these give you 200 power only after you've killed an enemy. That makes these very, very strong for, say, dynamic events that are occurring in Ore. Say you're doing the Balthazar chain, say you're doing any of the God Temples, really, and other particularly large dynamic events where there's a lot of mobs in the game. It makes them very, very strong also in Wild vs. Wild. In addition to the 200 power, you also get plus 70 ferocity. Further, there are some legs of some dungeons where maybe these can be strong. Say you've got a boss that has a couple of adds around it, and you can kill those adds and it will proc the extra power so you do more damage to the boss. Then the Dragon's Breath Buns are quite strong. But in general, because most of dungeons is skip mobs, kill a single boss, skip mobs, kill a single boss, the Dragon's Breath Buns aren't so great in those, though they do have their place. Anyway, so I either run with Dragon's Breath Buns, they're fantastic and cheap, or I run with Plates of Truffle Steaks. Now, Plates of Truffle Steak gives you plus 100 power flat, so say we had both of these on with 200 power up. And it also gives you plus 70 precision. If you're on, say, a Lightning Hammer build and you want that 100% crit chance, you need the Truffle Steak to get there with a single Banner of Discipline. You need the Truffle Steak. When they nerfed crit damage quite recently, when they changed everything over to ferocity, there used to be a lot of better foods, a lot of different foods out there, but these foods were, now that they've been nerfed, are actually much more in line with Truffle Steak. So I prefer the Truffle Steak. Maybe you guys can go for something else if you like. But yeah, these are the 2 foods I generally use. There is a third food, just as I explained with the Sharpening Stones. There is another one if you really want to go for it, and that would be this stuff here, seaweed salad. Now this one's going to look really weird to some of you guys, but it's a fantastic food. This gives you a 60% chance to gain swiftness when you kill a foe. Okay, but it also gives you plus 10% damage while moving. Plus 10% flat damage is way better than 100 power. Way better. So if you are comfortable playing a build where you can constantly be moving like so, then the seaweed salad will constantly be procced, and that's flat 10% extra damage. Insanely strong. And it turns out for Elementalist, there's only one skill on a staff, there's only one skill that forces you to stand still, and that would be Meteor Shower. So after your Meteor Shower is over, I'll talk about rotations in a second, you can constantly be doing this, and it's going to give you crazy high damage. So the Seaweed Salad are fantastic, but again, very pricey. So be considerate of that, and also think about your build. Like if you're a Greatsword Warrior, these aren't great, because you're constantly using 100 blades and you can't really move. So do consider, but for Ellie, it's strong, especially a Lightning Hammer Ellie. They're very rarely rooted, so it's strong there too. Those are your options for foods. Now what I've got in my inventory is I've got a Master's Salvage Kit, or if I was smart, this would be a Salvage-O-Matic. A Black Lion Salvage Kit for any exotics I may end up getting. And then I've got a whole row of potions here. These potions are what I use when I'm in dungeons. Instead of using hardened sharpening stones or toxic or any of that, when I'm in a dungeon, I'll pop a potion. If I'm in CM, I'll pop a powerful potion of Outlaw Slaying. If I'm in TA, I will use one of Nightmare Court Slaying. I'll use Dredge Slaying in some of the Sorrow's Embrace paths, and so on, right? One thing to consider with these is, think about COE, okay? The potion for COE is called Inquest Slaying, which gives you 10% flat damage against all Inquests. All of these give you 10% flat damage, okay? They're like Seaweed salad. They're really strong. But in COE, even though this is Inquest slaying, there actually aren't that many Inquests in the dungeon. And so you might be using a combination of other potions instead. But in general, I'd recommend get a row of at least just the regular dungeon potions. And there are a bunch more as well. If you run fractals, you might want to run some different stuff. Speaking of fractals, let's look at some other options here. I don't really run many fractals, so I don't lug these around all the time with me. But Scale Venom, if you run really high scale fractals, you will find you are getting nuked out by very powerful attacks. And Scale Venom is that you have a 10% chance to inflict weakness and vulnerability. You can't underestimate the vulnerability either. That's really strong, having everyone at 25 vulnerability all the time. But you have a 10% chance to inflict weakness. This is really strong. Weakness cuts the damage that enemies do down massively, and actually sort of allows you to survive in fractals despite the fact you're playing full glass characters. That's the thing with Guild Wars 2. There's no reason to run tanky kind of builds, because the best way to prevent damage is through harder mitigation like this. Scale Venom makes you way tankier than like a PvT guy straight away. Reflects make you invulnerable to certain kinds of attacks. This is why it's okay to run full glass. Anyway, Scale Venom, really strong in fractals, and I would recommend it. Moving on from fractals, I also have two items I occasionally have in my inventory. One of them is an experimental teleportation gun. You can buy this in Timberline Falls. The other is an experimental rifle. I've talked about these in my map breakout videos, but these are great for jumping puzzles and making jumps really you shouldn't be able to. They're very, very strong. And a couple of other options for your inventory if you really want, guys. Bank Access Expresses. These obviously are amazing, but limited. Revive Orbs. These are amazing. I actually don't carry either of these around with me. I like to have a nice clean inventory. And lastly, I have an alternate amulet. You'll notice my amulet over here is a mark of the Tetio's houses, and I picked this because it has an offensive infusion slot on it, so I could get +5 power. You could instead run with a utility infusion so that you could get bonus karma. Now mine's got a gilded infusion in it right now, which isn't ideal, but some people do carry these around with them just because it gives them that extra karma, and karma is a well sought after currency these days. Particularly if say you run low level fractals, having one of these with a karmic infusion in it is very strong. Anyway, so there you go. That's inventory done. Hopefully you guys learned something or had something interesting there. The final slots are these ones here, which I never talked about, and these are just all the weapons of my class. I'm wielding my staff, and I would recommend to any player in all of Guild Wars 2 to just have one of all your weapons there. There is really very little reason to not have them. They don't take up that many slots in your inventory, especially as an Ellie. I mean, Jesus Christ, if I was like saying a dual wield set, this is only 3 slots, and I have absolutely everything available to me. Every possible combination. Dagger, there you go, I've got it. Staff, there you go. Dagger focus, there you go, I've got it. Scepter focus, there you go. I've got everything, right? It's not many slots, make sure you've got them with you. So, that's inventory. I'm now done. Let's re-equip our staff, and let's talk about traits. So, as a staff elementalist, it's really cut and dry what traits you run, and there are only, in my opinion, 2 points for the build that are debatable, okay? You're probably going to go at least 6 in fire. In fact, you're definitely going to go 6 in fire. If you're running staff when you're not 6 in fire and you're going for a DPS build, you're doing it wrong, I promise you. Have to be 6 in fire. 4 in air is incredibly strong, and 2 in earth is incredibly strong. Let's look at what these are, and then we have 2 more traits we can play around with, and I'll describe the 3 different locations they could go in. So, number 1, fire. If you wanted max damage for the first slot, deal 10% more damage while attuned to fire. Okay, you can see why this is strong. It's just a flat damage modifier. Won't be stripped off of you for any reason at all. As long as you're in fire attunement, which is where you are going to be constantly camping on this build, you're going to get this damage bonus. Really strong. There is an option for this slot, but I'll talk about it later. The master slot is going to be Pyromancer's Alacrity. This reduces your recharge on all fire weapon skills, and because on a staff build, if you're trying to do max DPS, you're constantly in fire attunement, this is going to affect everything you try and do. Also, in combination with the Grandmaster Persisting Flames, which makes your fire fields last longer, it allows you to have a permanent lava font on the field. So I will demonstrate to you guys. Let's turn those traits off here for a bit of perspective, and under my feet here I'll cast Lava Font. So there's a lava font, and my recharge is just ticking away here. Now the lava font's ended, and I can't cast another. My recharge, look, I can't cast another. And there you go, finally I can. That's a lot of downtime on damage. Lava font has really high base damage on it. You'll see it reads on the tooltip, it's doing 3,600 damage over 4 ticks. Pretty impressive, right? But I can't constantly have it up unless I take these 2 traits. These 2 traits are essential to anyone running staff. Essential. The cooldowns also help your meteor showers and other abilities. And now if I demonstrate to you guys for some perspective, there's my lava font. It's still on the field. It's still on the field. It's still on the field. Oh, look, my cooldown's up. And there you go. I can drop another. Now, it may look like there's a bit of downtime there, but it's actually still pulsing damage on that very little bit, even when the animation seems to have disappeared. It's really awesome. There's some other things to talk about here, too. For the Grandmaster, the Grandmaster means whenever I blast in a fire field, of which I now have down permanently, I'm actually giving Fury out too, and that Fury stacks really high. If you blast a bunch of times in one of these fields, you can get crazy high Fury duration, like upwards of almost 2 minutes. It's really mental. It's crazy. So it's a very strong trait just for the Fury alone, and the extra ticks of damage on Lava Font are ice on the top. I'll tell you guys one thing, maybe it's a bit beyond the scope of the Ellie video, but frankly, one of the things that cripples DPS in a lot of teams, or you know, how quickly you kill stuff in dungeons, is Fury uptime. A lot of bad teams, a lot of pugs don't have much Fury, and Elementalists are so good at throwing Fury out. So good. You mean everyone in your party, as long as they're stacked with you, don't need to worry about providing their own Fury as long as you're there. It's really powerful, and for that reason alone almost, is one of the strongest traits in the Ellie arsenal. The other amazing fact of this is it makes your Lava Font last longer, and mathematically what this means is, okay, without the trait, it will tick damage 4 times. With the trait, it will tick damage 6 times. Does that sound like a lot to you guys? It actually is. When you're in a dungeon situation, your Lava Font can crit for 7k. Yeah, I've had much higher than that, but you know, 7k is a pretty conservative, nice amount of damage for a single Lava Font tick to do. So it goes 7k, 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 7k. If you don't have that trait, it ends there. But if you do have the trait, you've just done an extra 14,000 damage. This one trait is doing 14,000 damage every 4 3/4 of a second. It's very strong. There is nothing else in this slot that comes remotely close to it. The Blinding Ashes, no, you don't need. The internal cooldown cripples it anyway. Pyromancer's Puissance, this is the one that most people might be tempted, kind of new Ellies might be tempted to take. Don't go for it. This might is irrelevant, especially if in a group that's already pushing you to 25 might. Persisting Flames all the way. A staff build is nothing without it, guys. Staff build is niche, okay? It's insanely high sustained damage. It just keeps the damage rolling and rolling and rolling. And as a matter of fact as well, a Staff Ellie is the highest range DPS you can get in the entire game as well. I can do all this max damage. I can have a permanent Lava Font 1200 range away from me. The only thing I lose the benefit of from being at range is necessarily the might that my allies might give me. This is very, very, very powerful. Take both those traits. Alright, moving on to air. The first slot is going to be Bolt to Heart. This gives you 20% damage increase when an enemy gets below 1/3 of his health. Really nice. Against trash mobs, you're not going to notice it too much, but against particularly tanky bosses, this is really going to do some work for you. Very strong, especially if maybe you pull off, say, a Fiery Greatsword Rush on someone who's low. And there's nothing else in this slot that's even good. One of the main reasons we're fought in air magic is desperate for that precision, and also the ferocity on top is not going to hurt anyone. And the other slot here is going to be Arcane Lightning. This says it gives you more crit damage for a short time after you use an arcane skill, right? And that Arcane Lightning buff will appear on your bar. So here, let's use an arcane skill, Arcane Wave here. You'll see it appears here, and it lasts on me for 15 seconds, okay? This is a further 10% crit damage you wouldn't otherwise get. Now, some people might think, oh, okay, what kind of good traits are there for air? And they might be tempted to take this one here called Air Training, which is deal more damage while attuned to air. But the thing is, you can't have Air Training active and Internal Fire active at the same time. So Arcane Lightning is way, way better. There's no reason to ever take Air Training if you're on a staff build, because you're going to be camping Fire Attunement as much as you possibly can. A little tip as well, this thing will last for 15 seconds, but it won't stack. So on this build, we actually have 2 arcane skills on our bar. We've got a heal and we have Arcane Wave. So if I use both, does Arcane Lightning, the trait, go up to 30 seconds? No, it doesn't. It does not stack. So one of the things I think most Elementalists, even better Elementalists in the game, mess up is they pop both Arcane Brilliance and Arcane Wave together, and that's a mistake, because now their Arcane Lightning's going to run out, and oh look, their arcane skills are on recharge, they just lost 10% damage. So what you want ideally is to be in a group where you only have to pop one of these, and then you can wait for Arcane Lightning to run out and then pop the other, and just sort of chain between them, as you can see here. And absolutely the cooldowns do allow you to do that. When you are, say, opening up a stack in a dungeon, you're against the wall, they call for the fire field, you're going to be very tempted to drop both of these because you want the might stacks. Hopefully you'll be in a team that can already push you to the 25 might, but you'll go much better still, even in that situation, just waiting. because the 10% damage is worth way more than just 3 might would be. So yeah, you're better waiting, and there's other things to consider too, like if you can kill the boss in less than 15 seconds, then absolutely pop both for the might. But yeah, so do consider that. Alright, so that's air, and lastly, earth magic. Okay, we're 2 points in earth magic. We don't really care about the stats that it gives us here, but this does give us stone splinters, which is 10% damage when we're close to a target. Yeah, we're on a ranged weapon, but the way that dungeons tend to work is we're really close to enemies all the time, right? We're stacked up in their faces. So this is just basically another version of internal fire for us. Incredibly strong, and you should really always take it. Now here's where the decisions come in. We've got 2 more points for this build, okay? Where do we put them? Now, a layman might be very tempted to throw them immediately into water magic. And they're going to say, ah, look, there's this one here, Vital Striking. Look, another 10% damage while our health is above 90%. This is actually exactly the same as our Scholar Tier 6. Exactly the same. So you might think, well, if I've already gone for Scholar Runes, I may as well also take Vital Striking. The truth is, I find, and I've ran a lot of dungeons, there's something I think a lot of people say. They say, oh, if you're an Elementalist, you're basically 100% health or you're dead. And I think that's wrong. You know, yes, we are incredibly squishy. We're the squishiest thing in the game, okay? We're the lowest vitality, lowest armor. We're going to get absolutely destroyed. But it's still not true that we're either at 100% or we're dead. So you do have to factor that in. Both while taking Scholar Runes and while running Vital Striking, there's going to be a lot of situations where you get hit and they chunk you down to, say, 30% of your health, and you've lost the effectiveness of this trait. However, if you want very, very strong damage, then this is absolutely viable, and depending on your team, if you've got a real crew going, then absolutely maybe you can take this. The other option that maybe some slightly more experienced Elementalists would know about is Blasting Staff. Now, Blasting Staff increases the area of our staff attack. So now if I drop a lava font, you'll see it appears much bigger. This boosts our damage in a really significant way. Now, it's not really a numerical way, but basically it reduces RNG in the build. One of the things that does the most damage for us as an Elementalist is Meteor Shower. Every single time a meteor hits an enemy, it has a base damage of 1,483 damage. And we're constantly casting the Meteor Showers whenever we possibly can. See, now Blasting Staff helps Meteor Shower a lot. Some people will say, oh, you should take Blasting Staff because it helps people, you know, like blasting your fire fields because otherwise they might miss. I think that's kind of stupid. Anyone can blast in a small lava font just fine. But the thing that it does to Meteor Shower is fantastic. See, without this trait, let's just turn it off. If we cast a Meteor Shower, pay very careful attention to the AoE here, right? It's quite a big AoE, and each of these meteors are landing. Now, there's a good chance that a meteor that lands over here isn't going to hit a mob that stood right next to me. Now, you might think, oh my god, if you take Blasting Staff, this increases the AoEs of your staff skills. This is going to make there even more RNG. This is going to make the AoE even bigger, and it's going to be even rarer to hit enemies. Why would you ever take that? Well, the truth is, Blasting Staff works differently for Meteor Shower. Let's recast it and see what the AoE looks like. Now, it's actually the same. This was not like this at launch, but it's now actually the same. So what did Blasting Staff do? Blasting Staff actually upped the radius on the individual meteors. So the AoE is now the same size, but the meteors landing in it have a greater chance to hit enemies because they themselves are bigger. That reduces the RNG on casting Meteor Shower, and it really does mean that when you're stacked against a wall, you hit enemies way more. Another tip, hopefully most Elementalists would know about this, but if I cast my Meteor Shower against a wall like this, and you should always try to cast your Meteor Shower like this, if there's an enemy next to me, it's bad if I cast the Meteor Shower like this. If I cast it like this, only half of the actual AoE is available for meteors to land. And so now we've basically halved the RNG just from doing that. And by taking Blasting Staff as well, we've buffed the damage even higher, and we've got a really good chance that most of our attacks are going to hit the enemy. This will boost your damage far higher than 10% in water magic will. It will. Now, obviously, if you consider yourself a lucky person and you don't need this reduction of RNG, then totally, you can go for the water magic one. But actually, I've got to say, it took me a long time to come in this camp. I like Blasting Staff an awful lot. Alright, third and finally, there is another option. This option's really only going to be available if you've got a very solid team, but it is something more and more people are paying attention to now that certain changes have come in the game. So, one thing you guys might have noticed in one of the recent patches is the Spider Queen in Ascalon Catacombs now had her AI changed. It used to be that if you stacked against the Spider Queen in your corner, the mob would run in and she would never use one of her abilities. She's got this giant nuke attack, right? And she used to only use it while players were at range. Well, now she uses it even in melee. and that can be a big problem. It will wipe teams instantly. So the way a lot of people have come to deal with that is they've started running Ice Bow, and when the boss comes in, they charge up their Ice Bows and turn her into an Ice Block. And now for 5 seconds, she is CC'd like mad. Then say they'll cast their Ice Storm, just as I explained with the Meteor Shower. They'll reduce the RNG on it by casting it against a wall. And they will try to kill the boss as quickly as possible. Now, in very high-level teams, you find that mentality used a lot against many bosses. They'll use an Ice Bow on them to disable them completely and then nuke them very fast. Now, if you're in situations where you're doing that a lot, the best trait isn't Blasting Staff. The best trait isn't 2 in Water Magic. The best trait is to go another 2 into Air Magic. Now, most Air Magic, straight away this gives us even more precision and even more crit damage, so we're even higher now if we look at our stats, with 68% base, 226% crit damage. And what they do is, in their final slot, they take this Grandmaster here called Tempest Defense. Now, what Tempest Defense will do is give you a 20% flat damage boost to any foe who is stunned or knocked down. Now, an Ice Bow 5, the Ice Block, counts as a stun. So running with any of those situations where you're going to stun an enemy and try and burn them quickly, you'll burn them faster with Tempest Defense. This is twice as strong as the Water Magic one alone, not including the crit damage boost and the precision boost. And also, if you're killing something so quickly, the idea of reducing Meteor Shower's RNG isn't so important since you're casting your Ice Storm anyway, right? By the time you finish your Ice Storm, what, 2 seconds are up? Get a Lava Font down and then a quick little Arcane Wave and Arcane Brilliance, and the enemy's probably dead. Meteor Shower doesn't even come into it. And so if you are in these situations where you can kill bosses very quickly, if you've got a great team, absolutely the best thing you can possibly go for is Tempest Defense. Don't forget, this is more of a situational thing perhaps, but you can always swap while you're playing dungeons. For me, because I don't have teams as amazing as that, generally I will find this is what I run. 6, 4, 2, 0, 2. One other option that I'd like to talk about, I mentioned in Fire earlier, is our first slot, the Adept slot here in Fire, which I talked to you guys about being Internal Fire. Now, earlier I gave you guys some perspective on Lava Font, how if we have Persisting Flames, it does 14,000 extra damage because of 2 ticks, right? Well, there is a trait you can take. If you're not used to running in amazing groups, if you die a lot, I die loads. Ask anyone who runs dungeons with me, they'll tell you I die loads, right? You are the squishiest thing in the game, and I'm not always paying perfect attention for, 4 to 5 hour long dungeon stints every single day. When I go downstate, I find one of the best traits I can possibly take is Lava Tomb. Lava Tomb creates a lava font when you die, and the lava font that is created benefits from all these other traits. It will be bigger because of Blasting Staff, and it will last longer because of Persisting Flames. This does crazy damage. That is an extra 40-odd thousand damage just because you went downstate. That, if you cannot see, massively outpaces Internal Fire by a long way. Now, of course, when you are in downstate, you're no longer going to be under the benefit of your Scholar Runes, for example, but never fear, this trait also boosts your damage by 33% flat while you happen to be down. So it will compensate for any lost damage you get from other areas of your build because you would be dead and you continue to roll out huge damage. Your condies are cleared when you go downstate, but your boons aren't. So you can be down with Fury and 25 Might and a Lava Font down, a Meteor Shower rolling, and then you die and a second Lava Font's there. So you've got double Lava Font, Meteor Shower rolling on the same spot. For that reason, because I die a lot, because when I take this, I don't have to feel bad for dying, I run Lava Tomb. This is a fantastic trait. Does tons of damage. Do not knock it until you try it. It seems like one of those really unoptimum things. Well, you're trading for something that only matters when you go downstate. Obviously, you're in your perfect group. Go for Internal Fire. But if you are more like me, which I suspect most people are, Lava Tomb, I promise you guys, is absolutely awesome. I was trying to film a video just 2 days ago, I think, when for the footage, you guys haven't seen it yet, but for the footage, I needed to get killed by a mob in ore, and I died. I did 0 damage to the mob. Finally, it killed me, and then I accidentally realized I had Lava Tomb on me, and that trait alone killed the enemy that was fighting me, and I rallied and got very annoyed. So it's crazy strong. Do consider it. Fantastic stuff. So, those are traits. Let's talk lastly about your damage rotations. This is some very basic stuff that honestly I think most people would hopefully know. But the key to playing a damage staff elementalist is staying in fire attunement all the time. Some people are kind of snobby about this build, and honestly I was one of them, because it is a very brain dead way to play the game, but at the end of the day it does a lot of damage, and after a while, even though it's brain dead, it can be kind of fun at the same time. Mostly you're just going to be camping fire attunement. You don't want to leave because your traits rely on you being there and all your biggest damage are there. Your plan is to have a permanent lava font down. Now let's say we've just gone to stack against an enemy. Let's pretend this is the stack area again. I swear, if there's ever a fight in Divinity's Reach, I want to come stack here for whatever reason. So here, look, what you're going to want to do at the start of a fight is might stack as much as you can. You're going to drop an eruption, an earth 2 because that's a blast, and then drop your lava font. That will give you 3 might and fury already, and I would recommend just popping one of your abilities. You can either go with arcane wave first, which means you don't get the damage in the fight, or you can go with arcane brilliance first, which means you're not going to be able to heal during the fight, so that's totally your call. I usually go with wave first, honestly. And once you've done that, you're just going to keep the lava fonts rolling. Once an enemy comes in, you want to cast meteor shower, but make sure when you begin casting meteor shower, you've just finished with a lava font. So what I'm going to do is lava font and then meteor shower straight away. And what this means is while you're wasting all this time using this, at least you're still rolling damage out under your feet. And then you just keep casting your lava font. You keep auto attacking and you keep casting your lava font. And then finally, when your meteor shower comes back, try not to like cancel cast your attack as well, I guess, if you want, but you know, it's not totally necessary. And then once your meteor shower comes back, you can absolutely cast it again. That's the basic rotation. You keep your blasts going. You want to make sure that Arcane Lightning is always up. Basically, the game here, the only thing you have to pay any attention to is keeping Arcane Lightning up on you at all times, as much as you possibly can. So, you know, you get that benefit. And that can be kind of a fun little mini-game style thing you can do while playing. Alright, so that's your basic rotation. I'm going to show you guys some tips that probably many of you don't do. Let's have a look, first of all, at water attunement. Okay, I'm going to assume you know what your water skills generally do. You're going to know you want, if anyone ever calls for a water field, a 3 or a 5. Do remember that the 5 also cures conditions, and that can be quite helpful in certain bits. If everyone's a mobe, no one's got any Conti Cleanse. If you're running Sorrow's Embrace Path 3, you can totally use this to save yourself from the bleeds that Dredge throw out. But some other cool stuff, right? If your team is already really good at getting out 25 might, say you've got like a Phalanx Strength Warrior with you or something, you might not need to open on Earth 2, and instead your rotation in that situation is going to be Water 2. And then you swap to fire and do your stuff. Now, the reason you start with a water 2 is it's much higher base damage. This is 1,600 base damage instead of whatever the earth one is, which is lower. But also, it's a reasonable amount of duration on 5 vulnerability. Just like I mentioned with Fury earlier, one of the things that most people are deficient in for getting lots of damage out is their groups don't have Fury. Vulnerability is the other one. You want 25 vulnerability on enemies as much as you can. And sometimes Ellies can contribute to this in a big way by running 25 into air, which again, you do if you're doing the ice bow thing. But in general, you might not be pushing that much out, and the ice spike is really, really helpful for that. So you want to start in water instead of earth in those situations. Another little tip, frozen ground you're rarely, if ever, going to want to use. Maybe if they change the AI so that enemies actually scatter in AoEs someday, it will actually have some use. But the one area I would say is in fractals. What you guys might not know is this thing is unblockable. Why don't Ellies know this? It's unblockable, guys. So if you're running fractals and you're in the Grawl fractal, that giant shaman, when he goes into his shell and starts blocking a bunch of stuff, drop a frozen ground on him and you'll chill him. He can't get to the villager very quickly because you bypass his defenses. So do consider that. It does have its uses. Air magic, you're not really going to be using that much. If you're running, then obviously drop a static, use your 2 blasts, use the skill 4 and run. I very rarely, if ever, use the 2, very rarely, if ever, use the 1. Often though, if you don't have anyone who's good at pushing or pulling, so you don't have a Mesmer with Temporal Curtain, you can actually use this skill 3 Gust to push enemies against walls and move them where they need to be so you can blow them up, right? So do consider that also. Now let's finally look at fire. Now, I've told you guys you need to be constantly auto-attacking. Do consider, by the way, that the auto-attack is only slightly less powerful than the lava font. Look, base damage 930, base damage 980. It's really close, okay? So not only are you ticking a lava font damage up every second of, say, 7k, but you're also hitting for like 6.5k with a fireball every time. And both of these things are AoE. So you constantly want to be lava font and then auto-attacks, right? That's the build. But what about these 2 skills here? Obviously, Meteor Shower is going to be on cooldown as much as possible. What about these 2 skills? Remember how I told you guys it's sort of like a mini game with keeping up Arcane Lightning all the time, you know, rotating between your 2 arcane skills? You can sort of play another mini game that can take your focus with Flame Burst. Now, in fire magic for the traits, the 25 gives us 10% more damage to burning foes. So, the skill 3 will put burning on all the foes in front of you. This is not single target, it's actually AoE, right? Now, in some comps, say if you've got a couple of Guardians, definitely, you'll find many enemies have burning on them the majority of the time. So what you want to be doing is balancing your Arcane Lightning as much as possible, but also watching the enemy's conditions, and the second burning drops off of them, drop a Flame Burst. Now, if they've already got burning on them, don't worry about it, because you're lowering your damage, technically, I guess, by wasting your time using the Flame Burst. So don't worry about it if they already have burning on them, but you want to keep an eye on that Condi too. You're keeping an eye on your own Arcane thingy, Arcane Lightning, and you are trying to keep burning on the enemies, also while keeping yourself alive. Now, the skill 4, this is also an incredibly powerful ability people don't pay enough attention to, and they really should, Burning Retreat. Now, if we're just running around in the world, Burning Retreat will do this. We send us flying back and create a fire field. This fire field does benefit from persisting flames. It will last longer because we have that trait. This fire field doesn't do very much damage, okay? It's only 108 base damage per tick, but just like with Fiery Rush, which should be absolutely on our elite, by the way, the Conjure Fiery Greatsword, just like with Fiery Rush, if we lay them all together, say if we turn around and we use it in the corner, we've actually put a lot of little ticks of damage there. Now, individually, they don't do much damage, but they will ramp up quickly. If you have Fury, 25 Might, you know, the works, I have seen each individual tick go as high as 1,000 damage each hit, okay? And that can push out massive damage. Also consider the Lava Font thing. What if you have a Lava Font down, a Meteor Shower down, and then a second Lava Font, a Burning Retreat, and then you go downstate for another Lava Font? This is a lot of shit, right? A lot. And it really boosts your damage in a big way. Make sure you use Burning Retreat in the corner. But there's a problem with this. Many Elementalists don't like doing that, because if I'm fighting enemies here, and my screen's already kind of obscured, I've got stuff I know I want to dodge, it's going to be really irritating to go, oh, okay, alright, I think I got it, there we go, okay, and now I'm coming back. It's really annoying, especially when the FPS starts getting low, it's a real pain. There's a trick you can do with this that I think not enough people know about, and this allows you to turn around on the spot, cast a Burning Retreat against the wall, and then face the wall in your original orientation again without ever having to move your camera. And I'll prove that to you right now. I'm facing the wall. And so there you go. You see, I've now cast Burning Retreat backwards and my screen didn't change at all. This also allows you, while just wandering around Tyria, the general world, to use Burning Retreat for mobility. Now, again, people might be kind of annoyed. Well, this is kind of irritating, right? I'm running forward. All right, I'm going to stop. There we go. Okay, and now we're just going to keep going. Yeah, that's annoying. You can do it kind of fluidly, but it's unnecessary. You can do this without moving your camera. And the way you do this is you have to go in your options and enable free camera. Now, what free camera does is, by default in the game, while you're holding down right click, it moves your camera around, like so, yeah? And if we auto run and we start moving the camera, Liz will start walking wherever the hell we want her to go. However, with free camera enabled, if we left click instead and start moving the camera, oh look, she doesn't move. This lets us look behind us, do whatever we want, and all of our input controls stay with her on the same trajectory. Now, this is what we use to turn around instantly with Burning Retreat. Now, to unlock free camera, all you have to do is tap left click. So what I'm going to do here is tap left click and then press About Face. So that's another key. I should have clarified this already. You're going to want a control option called About Face, which I've got set to left all. Now, all About Face does is when I tap it, it turns my character around. So if I'm holding right click down and I About Face, nothing will actually happen, funnily enough. But if I'm auto running, it will turn her around. Now, if I enable free cam and About Face, then my camera stays in the same position and she turns around and starts running in the other direction. But if I do that again and cast a Burning Retreat, you'll see she turns around, Burning Retreats, and then I immediately go back to right click to disable free camera, and I continue running in that direction. So to sum up, okay, you need an About Face key. What you're going to do is you're going to be running in a direction, maybe running against a wall. You can be totally stationary as well. We'll do it against the stack spot again, okay? So free camera enabled in your options and a key bound to About Face. You're going to be stacked in your corner. You're going to tap left click to enable free cam. Then you're going to press About Face, which will turn your character around without moving the camera. Then you're going to use Burning Retreat, and because she's facing away, it will move her into the wall. And then you're going to tap right click again and just move slightly on the spot, which will turn her back around. So that's the rotation, okay? And it's a few key presses, but with just a tiny little bit of practice, you'll get used to it, and you'll find that you can very comfortably use Burning Retreat wherever the hell you wish. And this is important for more than just Elementalists. It's important for Rangers or anyone else with some kind of a move that moves them backwards. Very, very strong, and I really encourage people to learn it, okay? It's all about free camera, and it's all about face. So there you go. That's pretty much all I can suggest to you guys rotations-wise. It really is just a matter of keeping the lava fonts there, slamming down the meteor showers, and auto-attacking, and there you go. Lastly, let's talk about utilities. I was actually going to do this before rotations, but the heal skill you're going to want to use is Arcane Brilliance. This is strong because it's a blast finish, puts out Fury, 3 might to everyone you like, also procs Arcane Lightning. What more can you ask for? If there's a bunch of enemies around you as well, it scales the healing up really significantly. It's a great skill. Next is Signet of Fire. This thing should never leave your bar. This thing is so strong. You never activate it. You just leave it on there passively for all that crit chance, okay? The crit chance is amazing on it. I would never get rid of it, except maybe if you're in a really long running section, you don't have access to air attunement for swiftness, so maybe you can just quickly swap on a Signet of Air, which again, you never pop, and then just as you get to the fight again, you put on Signet of Fire. You can always swap these around because you never activate them, and you can benefit from their passive in the meantime. Particularly if you're in World vs. World, I often find myself with this thing on. So yeah, Signet of Fire. Next one would, for me, always be Arcane Wave. Perhaps if I'm really scared I'm going to die and I need to be alive for a bit longer, I will go with Arcane Shield, which again can proc out Arcane Lightning. It won't be a blast finish. It will do around about the same damage, though actually more damage. But the key to this skill is it's got a very long cooldown on it, so do be aware if you want to put on Arcane Shield. I would usually leave on Arcane Wave. And the third utility slot is really one that mixes up and changes a lot, in my opinion. Again, if you're a great team, you can start with a Conjure Frostbow. What you would do is someone would go to aggro the mob. You would drop your Earthquake or Water 2, I guess. You would go to Lava Font, immediately pick up an Ice Bow, target the mob. You can cast Arcane Wave whenever you like because it's instant activation. Arcane Brilliance if you want to. But then just as the mob comes in, you drop your Deep Freeze, instantly stunning it. And then you drop your Ice Storm against the wall for massive damage. You drop it, you're still in Fire Attunement, you go your Lava Font, and then your Meteor Shower just fine. So Conjure Frostbow is one thing I would perhaps run in that third slot, especially in a good group that's going to really nuke enemies down very quickly. Don't forget an ally of yours can pick that thing up. But there are some other options. High-end Fractals as an Asura, I actually quite like Radiation Field. It's a lot of weakness on enemies, an awful lot, and blasts people do in the area as well will put out weakness if they want it. But sometimes, I think most of the time, people would prefer the Fire Fields. And another great one is Glyph of Storms. It's kind of like a weaker version of Frostbow, right? It's just more, it's basically more damage over time you can be doing. So you can have that rolling down with your Lava Font, with your Meteor Shower, with your Burning Retreat, and then die at the same time. And, you know, it just gets silly at this point, the amount of damage that's rolling on this tiny spot. And with Glyph of Storms, it changes depending on the attunement you're in. So if you were to cast this in Earth, it will actually throw out blinds on the enemies. And if you're in an area where blinds are strong, and say you don't have a Thief with Smoke Screen, again, it can be a really solid choice for you. There isn't really anything else I think I would take in this slot. Perhaps under very rare situations, I would take Armor of Earth so that I don't get constantly CC'd. But, you know, that really comes down to dungeon-specific areas and maybe is beyond the scope of the video. Finally, the elite skill, of course, is Fiery Greatsword. Hopefully you guys are familiar with this by now, but you would drop it. You would make sure you don't have a target, make sure auto-targeting isn't on, and you make sure you cast a Fiery Rush in the corner if you want to nuke a boss down very quickly. And yeah, so that's pretty much it, guys. That is Staff Ellie. Hopefully you understand everything that you need to know now. I've talked about it quite exhaustively, but I wanted to throw it all out there on the channel before I forget it all. As I said, I probably will. And, you know, I really don't think there is more to it than this. Maybe someone can enlighten me on something, but I think any player who's actually doing everything I've described in this video is, I'm going to be very happy to have on my team. Anyway, that's it, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know if there's something I missed or something in particular that you thought was really cool and you managed to learn. And I guess I will see you next time. Maybe I will do an updated version of a Lightning Hammer build at some point, since I haven't for a while. Most I ever really talked about Lightning Hammer on my channel was when I was talking about all the conjure weapons in total. But yeah. So thanks, guys. Have fun out there in the dungeons. Hopefully this taught you a little bit of something. And I will see you next time. Have a good one.